Hey guys, anime fanfics here. This is chapters 56 to 61 of Obito's redemption story by Yaboy Assassin on Wattpad. Links to all stories are in the description below, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 56. In the heart of the Leaf Village, 11 genin were kneeled before the 5th Hokage and the Konoha Council. I'm sure you all are aware of the Chunin exams being co-hosted this year by the Hidden Sand Village. Tsunade starts, hands firmly on her hips. Your senseis have recommended you all to participate in it. But, there's something I would like you all to do. The atmosphere dips low and tension fills the room. Her next words make this possible. I've gotten intel from Jiraiya. The Akatsuki are more than likely to make a move on Lord Kazekage. So while you will be going to the Chunin exams as normal, you will also collect any information or anything suspicious and watch the Kazekage. Lady Hokage, if I may? Niji asks, lifting his head. When she nods, he speaks his mind. I can't help but think that if we snuck around the village, that would cause suspicion on us. Especially if we failed our mission and the Kazekage was captured. I agree with him. Shino says. Sneaking around the sand will only cause problems. We've already thought of countermeasures to such an event. Kohara states. The door behind them opens and they turn to see Shikamaru leading Temari in the room. There you are, Lady Temari. Right on time too. Tsunade says. Temari walks up to her desk and shakes her hand. Thank you, Lady Hokage. When I received the letter, I had to get here as quickly as possible. That's fine. Did you tell anyone else about this? She shook her head. No, not even my brothers. You said that we would keep this between us. Indeed I did. Tsunade nods. Wait, I have a question. Kiba says, confusing written all over his face. Why are we keeping this secret from the Kazekage? Isn't that going to put him in danger if he's not ready? Shikamaru is the one to turn and answer his question. Naturally you are correct, but we are doing this to bait the Akatsuki in. We're going to us the Kazekage as bait? Sakura blurts, still like most of her classmates that didn't understand this part of the mission. They're the Akatsuki's goal. Shikamaru says, turning to her simultaneously. My father and I theorized that if the Akatsuki already know that we have information on the abilities of 3 of their members, they're likely to send new members which we can use to gain more information. Or even capture one of them. That's just wishful thinking. Tayuya glares up at him. If they're more likely to send another member, then they're more likely to send someone stronger than before. Shikamaru smirks and gestures to Niji. And that's why we have the prodigy of the Hyuga on this mission as well. His skills far exceed the level of Jounin. We were all in the agreement that he would be able to deal with anything thrown at him. Are you saying this mission is being carried out simply because of me? Wouldn't that put the rest of them at risk? No. Tsunade answers. If anything, it will give them experience to grow. We've only got a handful of experienced shinobi because of what happened 2 years ago. We've had to adopt a system to push anyone with special potential, and you all have that quality. Before it is forgotten, Hamura starts, staring blatantly at Tayuya. Your movements will be under strict watch. You have not yet shown full loyalty to the Leaf Village. Tayuya growls at him and bites her lip hard enough to draw blood to keep herself from talking. She knows it won't help her case. Ino gives her a look that demands her not to say anything. I'll be sure to keep watch over her. Niji says, trying to switch topics quickly, knowing the redhead's fiery, almost uncontrollable temper. Is there any directive you wish me to move under, or shall I choose what I think is necessary? Tsunade hums, picking up a stack of paper and going through them quickly. When she's done, she puts them back on the desk and looks at Niji. The only directive is to keep the Kazekage safe and your comrades alive. Any other thing is something I'll put under your full control. Koharu whirls on her. Are you sure about this, Hokage? I know his skills and feats in other mission are no doubt impressive for his age, but he's young and this is something as important as saving the Kazekage. We must tread carefully. I think he's proved himself. Hamura states, eyeing the teen. I'd like to see him in action. If this proves correct, he could even have a field promotion to Jounin. Rock Lee silently gasps, but says nothing more and briefly glanced at his rival. You will not get too ahead of me, Niji. I will catch up to you. He thought, his hand clenching underneath him. I think that as well. Tsunade agrees. I officially announce this as an A-rank mission, possibly S-rank. Niji, you are the leader of this mission. Leave with Lady Temari as your guide in 1 hour. Dismiss. Triple X. In the heart of the Hyuga compound, the leader of the Hyuga clan watched from the sidelines as Niji sat crossed-legged in complete silence. Byakugan active, he was actively trying to see the bird soaring high into the air. Not only was this training for him, but it kept him calm and focused. He would need it with this upcoming mission. I have to succeed. If I can become a Jounin, watching Obito will be easier for me to accomplish. He may well be in a position to affect things the Uchiha could do. He didn't entirely trust the Uchiha yet and he wanted a fail-safe in case he turned mad once more. I heard about your impending mission, Niji. Hayashi walked over toward him as graceful as his manners were taught to him and stopped slightly behind him. Do you feel as if you're ready to take it on? I do. He answered quickly, without the slightest of hesitation. But, he says and frowns slightly. The Akatsuki does worry me a little. Hayashi understands this with a single nod. Yes, I've heard of those mercenaries. They are quite the troublesome bunch. You'll have to be extra careful about fighting them. I don't plan on fighting them. Those words surprise Hayashi. The only known knowledge that we have about them are of 3 members who the Uchiha speculated didn't use everything in their arsenal and would have won had he not been saved. It would be suicide to go and fight them without a hint of how strong they are. Rarely did the older Hyuga smile, but he could help the one that graced his face when a thought came to him. You sound like your father, Niji. A lot like him. Niji smiled softly as well. Thank you. Triple X. Sakura was in her room packing for the trip, trying her best to keep the worries about the mission to herself. She didn't want her parents to start acting all crazy and petitioning to get her removed from the mission. She remembered a particular face that Gaara made about 2 years ago and smiled for some reason. I wonder how he'd look as the Kazekage. It's crazy that I haven't seen him in 2 years. Quite the concentrating look to have just for packing. Startled, the Kunoichi turned to where the voice came from in a frenzy. Kakashi-sensei? What are you doing? I could have been naked? The eye-smiling man only put a single hand up as he was crouched comfortably on the railing of her balcony. He waved at her to come. Begrudgingly, she walked over to her glass door and slid it open. She crossed her arms and gave him a look. Sorry, he waved off. I won't do it again, so relax. She sighed, letting it go. Well, okay. What did you need, Kakashi-sensei? He let himself relax. Well, as your sensei, I heard about this mission you're about to take. I'm about to head out on a separate mission, so I wanted to leave you with a bit of parting advice. Sakura nodded and stood a bit taller, seeing that her sensei was serious. You've progressed well with Tsunade's training these past 2 years. But, a vision of Sakura and Tsunade side by side appeared in his mind. You're basically almost a carbon copy of her. Well, a worser version. Seeing his cute little student frowned, he chuckled and rubbed his head. Sorry. I just meant it as she is a better, more seasoned version of you. What is this all about, sensei? She pouted, crossing her arms. Basically, he pointed at her. You won't make it far with such a limited move set. Limited move set? She echoed, confused. Her move set wasn't narrow. Not only could she heal her own injuries and others, she had knowledge in poison, surgery, and all types of medical procedures. That wasn't. I'm talking about things outside of the medical field, Sakura. He said, quickly figuring what was likely going through her head. Outside the medical field? Kakashi nodded. Think about it, Sakura. What can you do other than a medical ninja? Nothing came to mind at first. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that outside of being a medic she had next to nothing. Exactly. I smiled. While being a medic ninja is fine, I think having more than one options in a situation will get you out of a jam. He held up 3 fingers and put them down as he continued to explain. One of the thing I want to teach you is how to use your affinity for your elemental jutsu. I have all 5 natures, so I'll be able to find something to aid your style of fighting. 2, I want to teach you a bit more in the genjutsu area. I've already stated you have the chakra control necessary for it, so that should be easy. But it will put you through a bit of endurance. And lastly, sensory techniques. I want you to be able to sense when your opponent even in the midst of fighting. That'll take the most work. Sakura was surprised at the things he wanted to teach her. She never even thought about any of it. Okay, sensei. I'll try to live up to your expectations. Kakashi smiled and stood up, still standing on the railing. I'd like you to exceed them instead. With a quick seal, the copy ninja was completely out of sight. Sakura stood on her balcony a few seconds longer, gazing at the spot where his sensei stood. Guess I got more training to do. Her fist clenched tight as she stared at it with conviction. I won't put all the burden on Naruto. I'll bring Sasuke back with my own hands. As she turned away to walk back into her room, her sensei heaved a small sigh, standing on the roof of her house. Done with your parting words? Gemma asked, sticking a new senbon in his mouth to chew on. Yeah. He muttered. Let's get a move on. We have our own mission as well. An hour later after the debriefing, the shinobi were running through the forest, Temari and Shikamaru leading the pack with the other close behind, in a formation in case of attack. Niji's eyes shone with conviction. I will change the destiny of this world. The Akatsuki will not get the one-tails. Triple X. Hours later, the large group of young shinobi had stopped near the border of the Land of Fire to rest for one final time before crossing over into the Land of Wind. 19 hours had passed without any significant event and they all were seated around a campfire, not having to worry about having a watchout since they were so close to the border. So troublesome, Shikamaru muttered, being the closest to the fire as he laid with his hands behind his head on the ground. Someone remind me to never do that again. Oh, don't be such a wuss, Shikamaru. You need the exercise anyway. Ino laughed, imagining her teammate actually trying to exercise. Kiba couldn't hold in his laugh. Ha! What I would pay to see that. Well, save your money. He closed his eyes and shuffled a bit to get comfortable. It's never happening. I don't blame you, Shikamaru. Choji popped a couple of chips into his mouth. I don't like exercise either. And you wonder why you're so fa-. She was stopped when Tenten hastily covered her mouth. Don't say that. She whispered in a panic that seemed so serious while looking funny at the same time. That word is dangerous. Sai tilted his head and had a plastered smile on his face. Can one with a birthmark on their ass really talk about someone else? Shut the fuck up, Sai bastard. Such language. Shino shook his head. And from a female as well. Can't we go 10 minutes without someone yelling? Niji asked, exasperated. It was seriously annoying. Yelling shows youthfulness. Rock Lee yelled out. I don't think such a thing is possible. Lee-Ten whined, desperately covering her ears from the voice that ripped through her eardrums. Why do you have to be so loud? She was right beside him. This is a forest after all. Shino said. All the noise they were making were not only annoying to him but his insects as well. Let's try not to disturb the animals. Oh, shut it, bug breath. If they are so disturbed, then they'll just move somewhere more quiet, she said, disregarding the noise. She turned to Choji, the sound of his crunching getting on her nerves. But I don't think I can make an exception for that. Choji tugged the bag of chips away like someone were trying to take them away from him. Ino swore that was the fastest she'd seen him move. The chips stay. So serious. Sai cut in. He never heard someone be so serious over food. Are they really worth it though? Worth it? Choji echoed excitingly, standing to his feet and holding up the chips up as if they were a holy artifact. These are the limited edition, top quality, and super exotic to good chips. They aren't just normal food. They're supreme. Oh, Sai muttered in awe. Well, no one knew if it was genuine awe or not. Not with him. I never knew chips were such a prize. Perhaps I should start a collection as well. Choji seemed to think it was genuine enough and nodded multiple times in approval. You are a worthy apprentice. Perhaps I shall take you on. With Choji being the center of attention, Niji found ample opportunity to slip away. He was unaware that someone had seen him leave and chose to follow after him. Niji arrived at a slow-moving lake, flowing downstream from the gentle breeze. He leaned on the tree overlooking the river, placing his focus on the full moon that light up the forest. Looking at the moon, he remembered the visions he would always get. They always occurred to him in black and white, as if he was surrounded by a dark void but on some type of white surface. A particular strong breeze fluttered his clothing and hair, and while it put his hair a bit in his face, the reveled in the breeze. It was calming to him. He wanted to feel that way forever, but as quickly as it came it faded away, leaving him starving for more. I wonder. He trailed off, silently activating his Byakugan to see just how far he could see. Would he ever be able to see the limits of the sky? To the sun? The moon? Suddenly he closed his eyes, deactivating the Byakugan and kept them close. You can come out, Hinata-sama. Is there something you wish to ask? When he stretched his vision, he clearly saw his cousin behind a tree to his far left, observing him. A particular pattern in her heartbeat told him she also had something on her mind just as he did. She stepped out from behind the tree and walked over until she stood beside him, enjoying the sight of the moonlight hitting the river. I just wanted to know why you are here instead of with everyone else. She stuttered softly, turning her gaze to him. She was worried about him, huh? Very typical of her. Just wanted some time to think is all. She frowned at that answer. Somehow she knew that it wasn't the full truth. Normally she would have given up and left him to his devices, but something told her to push the topic. But you weren't talking at all. You even kind of looked uncomfortable. So I was just thinking dash. I'm fine, Hinata-sama. Niji cut in briskly, turning to her. While his glare wasn't harsh in any mean, it had its own way of being intimidating, and Hinata had to turn away from it. Niji caught himself, turning back to the river and sighing deeply. He needed to control that side of him. She was only worried about him. I'm sorry. It's fine, Nisan. She turned and shot him a warm smile. I know it was just an accident. Niji still felt bad about it though, despite what she said being true. But still, it was out of line for me. You were simply asking a question. A redness crossed her cheeks and she looked away in embarrassment. It's okay. Really. I thank you for your understanding. Niji reveled in the second breeze that seemed to go through his body and cool down his warm body. There was something bothering me actually. He admitted unwillingly. Hinata suddenly turned to him, surprised he would actually admit it. She was close to giving up. She knew that he could be stubborn when he wanted to. It's this mission, it's worrying me. He was worried? Hinata didn't think someone as strong as her cousin worried about a lot of things, but just like most of her clan, reading his emotions were hard. But this is the Akatsuki. The same organization after Naruto-kun. This was different. Their power were projected to rival that of tailed beasts. Is it the Akatsuki that is worrying you? Niji nods slowly. That's a part of it, I suppose. He pauses and bends down to pick a rock off the ground. He stared at it as he spoke, as if hypnotized by it. It's mostly the responsibility I have as the leader of the mission. A lot rides on this. If he failed, he not only failed his village, he failed the Sand Village and his friends. Pressure like that would weigh on just about anyone. Niji was no different. Why you don't have to worry yourself with that? Niji glanced back over at her, surprised, not expecting those words to escape her mouth. She smiled. The others are as strong enough to look after tea themselves, and there are plenty of us. You don't have to take all the responsibility on your own. Niji smirked and threw the rock into the river, watching it bounce across it before losing momentum and sinking into the cold water. Thank you, Hinata-sama. That makes me feel a bit better. Niji. Where did you go all of a sudden? The two Hyuga turned to see Tenten running down to meet them, and it didn't take her long to do so. So this is where you were. How come you took off like that? Nothing of concern. Niji answered, crossing his arms. I simply wanted some peace and quiet, and Hinata-sama happened to join me. She grabbed his arm, tugging on it. Well, come back. After we have a meal, we'll be on the road again. We gotta get to the sand to prepare for the Akatsuki. He nodded. Right. Triple X. Finally settled. Time to sleep. Shikamaru flopped on his bed after taking of his sandals. They had arrived at the sand a day later and were given 4 hotel rooms to be split for the group of 12 shinobi. They split into a boy and girl group and divided the rooms amongst them. Niji sat on his bed, the closest to the window. Moonlight shined through and he stared out at it. He didn't know why he was so drawn to it all the time. The moon looked so strange somehow. I don't know. I'm beat too. Kiba flopped on his bed as well, followed by Akamaru, who laid silently down beside. I shall sleep as well. Sai said. Niji wouldn't have known he had even gotten in the bed if he didn't announce it. He was so silent when he did so. It wasn't long before the rest of the occupants in the room were fast asleep. Niji envied them. All that was on his mind was preventing him any type of peace of mind. He felt like moving because of it. Fighting. He needed something to fight. Someone. Go to sleep, Niji. Niji blinked. He turned behind him to see Kiba rolling over to turn away from the Hyuga. I can hear your heartbeat going crazy. Calm down, will ya? I'm trying to sleep. My apologies. He muttered. He scooted himself down to the edge of the bed and laid back. The way the bed compressed against his weight put him to sleep. Triple X. I thought we rolled in pairs. We do. Officially anyway. I suppose we have an extra member for extra precaution. You may have not heard, but the several villages are participating in this event. Which villages? I already know the Leaf and Sand are part of it. Of course they are. They're co-hosting after all. Anyway, other than them, the Hidden Mist, the Hidden Waterfall, the Hidden Grass, and our very own Hidden Rain. That's a lot. I expected the Cloud and Stone to decline. That isn't surprising at all. The 2 S-class shinobi stopped in their tracks. This is where we meet up. But I don't see him anywhere. Yeah. Where is he? I'm right here. Sasori, Deidara. The 2 teammates turned to see their newest addition to the mission they were on. Pakora reveled herself from the shadows of a tree, stepping into the beaming sunlight. Deidara looked in between the two. So, you guys will be heading back to your own village. How do you feel about that? He asked as they began walking to the sand. Sasori decided to say nothing. There was no point of any of it. Nothing. Pakora said. She closed her eyes briefly to let a cool breeze wash over her. Nothing at all. Triple X. Orochimaru smirked, sitting on his throne. Before him were three ninja, all bowed and ready to receive orders from him, while Kabuto stood faithfully by his side. Those leaf urchins are co-hosting the next Chunin exams. I would like you all to go there and participate as the Sound Village's own three-man team. I have a question. Orochimaru paused, but the smirk on his lips remained. What is it? Sasuke-kun? The aforementioned ninja raised his head slowly to meet Orochimaru's glee-filled eyes. I thought this village wasn't considered an actual shinobi village. How come we can enter with no problems? Plus that, they were responsible for killing the third Hokage. He was sure that alone would make them unqualified for the exams. Orochimaru let out a short chuckle before responding. I see a certain glint in your eye that I haven't seen since we had our little skirmish in the Forest of Death. Are you really so excited to see your old friends again, Sasuke? No. Came his reply, swift and quick. Just answer my question. My so pushy. But I'd be delighted to sate that growing curiosity in you. He said with a smile that disgusted Sasuke. While you've been training in remote locations, I've been busy turning this charade of a shinobi village into an actual one. I've made laws and such, and even a system similar to that of the Leafs for government and whatnot. I've made sure that my shinobi took as many missions as humanly possible and made sure each and every mission was successful for almost 2 years. And now all of that work will come to fruition. What are you talking about? Sasuke asked. I'm talking about this opportunity that has presented itself to us. Secretly, I've gained an ally in the Snow Country, and I have a feeling that it was somehow leaked and that the Hidden Leaf knows it. But they haven't done a thing about it. Why do you think that is the case? Sasuke remained silent briefly as he considered the question carefully. Because the elder princess is engaged to my family member. If they were to reveal that it's possible to heal? Defect. Yes, that's correct. Orochimaru finished. Even despite the loyalty shown by the Uchiha, even by killing their own family, they still aren't trusted. What a world we live in. The snake Sannin mused. Sasuke's face contorted into a rage, but he remained as silent as ever. He hated thinking about his family. The Snow will remain an ally to the Leaf by obligation until Obito Uchiha gets the Snow Princess pregnant. Then new negotiations may be discussed. What does that have to do with the Chunin exam? Sasuke asked impatiently, wanting to get to the point. They were forced to consider us a village because of their ties with the Snow Country, and despite the fact that we killed the third Hokage, invite us to participate in the Chunin exams. Don't you think this is some sort of trap? He asked skeptically. There was no way a village as sneaky as that would lay down like that and accept defeat. I've already considered such a thing. He answered. But something like that is impossible. They may try to watch your movements, but against someone like you that would be utterly useless. I trust you find a way to keep a low profile. That still doesn't explain the purpose of putting me in the exams. You have an alternative motive, don't you? Spill it. Orochimaru chuckled at the order but nevertheless spoke. Your true motive is to capture one of the 3 Jinchuriki that will be present at the Chunin exams. Sasuke couldn't hold his surprise and neither could his teammates. What? Jinchuriki? Yes, Sasuke. Orochimaru confirmed. Gaara is the holder of the one-tailed beast. He is hosting the Chunin exams and at one point or another will be present. Most likely, he'll be the hardest to fight. He's got good security and is quite strong in his own right. I've even heard that he's got an affinity for the iron sand technique used by the third Kazekage. Sasuke filed that tidbit of information in his mind. But what about the other 2 Jinchuriki you mentioned? Who else will be there? I have no doubt the Hidden Waterfall village won't send their Jinchuriki out of hiding to represent their village and give it the respect that it used to have in its glory days. They used to produce geniuses on the level of even you every year. It's truly a shame what their village is now. Sasuke felt a pit in his stomach when he finally got out his next question. And the last one? I've had Kabuto go and collect information about this year's Chunin exams. And he found something of most interest to me. And perhaps to you as well. Just spit it out. Sasuke nearly yelled, losing his patience. Naruto Uzumaki is heading in the direction of the Hidden Sand Village. Chapter 57. What a bunch of losers. None of these guys smell like a challenge at all. Neji was forced to agree with that notion but chose not comment as his teammate had. He almost glared at the competition this year as they piled in the entrance at once. It seemed they all would share this hotel until further notice. Which was great. Tenten seemed to share his thoughts, leaning on the wall right beside the window. Seriously, this is the competition this year? I wanted to actually have my weapons used practically. I wouldn't be so quick to judge. Hinata stuttered as usual, disagreeing with her friends. There's something that I feel off about some of them. When Neji turned to her to see why, he saw that she had her Byakugan activated. He narrowed his eyes before doing the same, and noted immediately that some of their chakras were heavily suppressed. Except that one. He thought, staring at a petite teen talking enthusiastically with her team. She was most definitely the loudest of the bunch walking into the hotel. Her chakra reserves were large, like a bottomless pit. They reminded him of Naruto's, though hers was a lot stronger and definitely more controlled if she could hide this much of it from his natural senses. She must be a Jinchuriki. Like Naruto. Well, I'm curious to find out how strong they are as much as the next guy, but that's not what you called us in here for, right Neji? Sakura said, a few feet away, sitting comfortably on the bed. You're correct. He moved away from the window but not before shutting the blinds. He walks to the middle of the room, standing before his entire team. I called you all here to confirm important matters. What I was doing just then was making sure no Akatsuki members infiltrated the ranks of the genin entering the exams like Orochimaru did 2 years ago. Hopefully, I was able to have confirmation that they hadn't from their chakra, unless of course they have techniques like the Sannin that can enable them to hide it from my Byakugan. That wasn't easy to accomplish. Hiding something from a normal Byakugan was difficult enough, but his Byakugan should have been more than enough to catch anything suspicious and min it. Hopefully. Then that means it isn't confirmed. Tayuya stated, and Kiba shot her a dirty look. You should shut up when no one's talking to you. Who the hell do you think you're talking to, dog breath? She glared at the boy, not liked him since they first met all those years ago. You, traitor scum. They stood up at once and came at each other, nearly bumping heads, for not that Rock Lee and Neji came in between them. Neji forcing Tayuya back with a single arm and Rock Lee holding Kiba by his waist from behind. Calm down. The both of you. Neji orders, but no such thing happens. In fact, it seemed to escalate even further as their resident dog lovers seemed to go feral. Go, Akamaru. Kiba ordered. The dog complied almost instantly, skidding past the commotion of bodies and throwing himself at Tayuya with open jaws. He hadn't the chance to even reach halfway towards the Kunoichi when Sai just appeared in front of him. Somehow Akamaru was able to react, that tried to bite only to be sidestepped rather easily and grabbed around his ribs, trapping him in a fierce grip that he tried escaping by thrashing around to no avail. Akamaru! Kiba yelled in a panic, trying desperately to get past Lee's iron grip. I'm slipping. Lee noted, his arm barely holding back the Inuzuka head. I had no idea he possessed such strength. Kiba was a second away from freeing himself when a swarm of insects flooded the room so much that most participants were forced against the walls from the force of them just being ejected from Shino's body. Even Neji was surprised at just how fast it had happened. All at once, the swarm started to go back into Shino and in seconds the room was free once more. I'm sure that finally calmed everyone down. It seemed his approach was spot on as the swarm surprised everyone enough for them to cool off, having something that's shocking to focus on. Tayuya slapped Neji's hand off her and backed away, still glaring harshly as if the entire room were against her. Niji decided not to do anything about that, and turned to face Kiba, who Lee also freed from his grasp. Kiba, stay calm and keep your temper under control for the remainder of this discussion. I didn't do much this time, for your sake, but the next time I will put you down myself. Are we clear? Kiba rubbed the part of his hand that felt tender from Lee's grasp. Yeah, whatever. Just tell her to keep her mouth shut. He walked off, beckoning for his dog to come to his side after he was released by Sai. It took a few seconds for Niji to begin talking once more, and he made sure he had the room's attention. I'm sure we will be fine if my theory is correct and the genin ranks have not been compromised. But that leaves us to where the Akatsuki may show up. So I propose we all work around the clock shifts, watching the Kazekage from the shadows. Only those good at stealth, since he's been known to be a very good sensor of chakra and he isn't supposed to know about this. Who are you suggesting for the task? Ino asked. Well, for one, me. I can both hide my chakra and keep an eye out from a distance. Hinata-sama as well. He said before thinking over the abilities of everyone in the room. I suppose Sai as well, considering his drawings in Shino, because he can stay silent and his bugs can keep an eye out. That should be enough to keep him covered around the clock without being noticed. What about me? I can track too. Kiba said. Niji didn't even consider it. You have the ability, but you're much too loud. You're bound to get caught. Kiba pouted and grumbled under his breath, unable to disagree with the Hyuga but not wanting to admit as much. Niji didn't want to waste even more time by lying to someone like Kiba. But I wonder, Sai mused, his usual tone of voice. How will we watch as we take part in the exams? Our goal is also to become Chunin as well. Hey, that's right. Ino agreed. How can we make that possible? Niji closed his eyes briefly to think. Perhaps a shadow clone could do the trick? He had the chakra to do it, but it would take him a while to have it maintain itself for a long time. Time he didn't have. No need to worry about that. Niji opened his eyes, turning to Shino, who was letting his insects escape his body. They shaped into a figure and seconds later formed into Shino himself, an exact replica. With this I'll be able to keep an eye over him and participate in the exams. His usual intoned voice was filled with a bit of pride at the advanced technique, and Niji could see why. Then we're in agreement. Niji concluded. Now what was left to do was see the Akatsuki's next move and act accordingly. Triple X. Kakashi noticed the worried glances his team kept sending them as they headed closer and closer to the hidden sound village. But he ignored it. He couldn't help but feel that something was about to go wrong, and the fact that his student was a part of this village didn't help him in the slightest. What would Lord Third think? He thought, it bringing him slight amusement to the otherwise depressing atmosphere. The old Kage would probably have a heart attack if something like this were to come to pass. Truly, Kakashi didn't want to be in this position either. It was his fault that he couldn't bring Sasuke on the good side, to keep that darkness out of his heart. Jiraiya was supposed to be here instead to feel out Orochimaru's intentions, but Naruto was likely to follow after him and he wasn't ready to fight Sasuke yet. His training was not yet complete, according to Jiraiya anyway. But Kakashi was willing to trust it. He knew his teammate better than anyone else after all. Kakashi, are you okay? Ganma finally asked, his worry getting the better of him. I'm fine, was his immediate response. They had no time for it after all. They were nearly at their destination. Aoba grabbed his shoulder from behind, stopping the Hatake in his tracks. Hey, Kakashi, I'm serious. If you... I'm fine, Aoba. Kakashi reassured, grabbing the Jonin's hand and slightly turning back to face him. You can let me go. I won't falter over this. Kakashi could tell Aoba was sizing him up, but eventually, he did relent and let him go. Kakashi knew he would have to prove to them he was fine before they did something extreme. He turned back forward, letting in an almost inaudible breath. Let's keep moving. The next part of the journey was silent for the small three-man team. No traps. No ambushes. Just them walking to an outpost where they were supposed to meet the team that would be participating. You all can stop there. Kakashi paused immediately at the slithery voice that echoed through the clearing of the trees. He looked all around him, trying to find the source of the voice, knowing it came from Orochimaru. But that was strange. How did Orochimaru sneak up on him without him noticing? Not even Itachi could do something like that. Kakashi hoped that the man didn't get even stronger. A sudden shift to above alerted him to a presence, and when he looked up, he found the snake standing on a tree, smirking down at them. Kakashi willed his body to relax and he stared unflinchingly at the Sannin. Orochimaru, he almost spat, that feeling once more rising in his chest. Do you have the participants for us? The man chuckled, raising his hand. Yes I do. He snapped. The sound echoed, and it wasn't long before the Konoha ninja found themselves surrounded by what seemed 100 sound ninja. Kakashi felt Ganma tense violently, almost snapping his Sanban in half and Aoba back away, if only slightly, with a nervous but fierce air around him. He would fight even if it were to the death. Kakashi for his part hadn't even moved, not feeling the need to take his eyes off Orochimaru and show any type of nervousness. Orochimaru. You know that if we are even attacked, you are basically declaring war on the Hidden Leaf. The man only chuckled again, and Kakashi was getting tired of hearing it. Is that what's making you so fearless, copy ninja? But what if I told you I don't care about that? I wonder what your response would be. Kakashi only stared. You're playing a dangerous game, Orochimaru. Don't send your people to death. He brought his hand up, channeling chakra into it before lightning bursted from it. They move this way, they die. Damn it, Ganma muttered, pulling out a kunai. He had a feeling this would not go peacefully. I didn't know fodder could make you nervous, sensei. Kakashi felt his mouth go dry and his body froze. That voice. He knew that voice. It sounded a bit mature, but there was no mistaking it. Kakashi turned away from the snake Sannin to the ground to see Sasuke looking at him with no hint of emotion. His white, loose shirt flowed in the wind as he took steps toward him. He was confident. But what was he planning? Sasuke. He warned. Kakashi, order your group to step away. Orochimaru told him. Sasuke wants to fight you to test his ability against yours. Surely you'll give him the challenge he seeks. We won't be going anywhere. Aoba yelled out defiantly, standing firm beside Kakashi. This is a blatant attack against the leaf. You know this, Orochimaru. Guys, Kakashi grounded lowly. Get back. He could feel the eyes of his teammates whirl onto him. Are you crazy? Aoba yelled. That's not what we're here for. Ganma glared into Kakashi's back. We can retreat. There's no reason to. Ganma. Kakashi spoke with finality. His mind was made up. He lifted his headband onto his forehead but waited to open his eye. Get back. The next seconds were tense. The two Jonin couldn't figure out what they were to do next, and they could feel that their enemies were getting impatient. Move already. Orochimaru glared at them. They were ruining the fun for him. If you want to fight so much, I have plenty of foes for you. He gestured proudly to his gathering of ninja whose chakras fluctuated in excitement. I'm the only one who will be fighting Orochimaru. Kakashi stared up at him. That's the only way I will fight Sasuke. He knew Orochimaru wanted to see it for his amusement. Honestly, it made him sick. Orochimaru smirked at him, and Kakashi had little doubt he figured out that Kakashi knew his motive. He was only happy the old Sannin relented. Fine. He gestured to Sasuke, and Kakashi forced himself to look at the calm, steel face of his student. Sasuke, get on with it. With a single step, Sasuke was racing forward nearly at his sensei in the span of a few seconds that seemed even faster for Kakashi. Kakashi threw himself forward, clashing with his student and deflecting his katana with a kunai. Kakashi stared into the cold orbs of his student. Sasuke, he gritted. What are you trying to gain from this? The force generated from the two pushing against each other threw sparks into the air, and it only got fiercer from there. He finally spoke. I want to put my strength against yours. His eyes narrowed with a certain glint that Kakashi had seen in Maniacs. And then I'll go find my family and hunt them down just like they did the rest of ours. Kakashi's eyes widened in surprise. Did he hear that correctly? Did Sasuke just say he would kill his family just like they killed the rest of his? How did he know of that? Sasuke, how do you know about that? Who told you? Kakashi saw his eyes widen before they narrowed and he pushed himself more into him. Kakashi felt just how strong Sasuke was as he was forced back, his feet digging into the ground. You knew! He snarled, enraged. You knew about what they did and you didn't tell me. It wasn't my place. Itachi wanted to be the one to reveal it to you. As your older brother. Screw that. He yelled out, a vein popping from his neck. Kakashi could tell there was no explaining to Sasuke. He was out of it. He would have never told me. Because he knew I was planning on avenging our people no matter what. I'm glad Obito told me. Kakashi felt his heart skip a beat. Obito told him. Obito told him. Why? And why didn't anyone know about it? Obito had to have kept it a secret. But he knew that was the reason Sasuke deserted, so why would he? Kakashi would wring his throat for it, but right now he needed to deal with Sasuke. Sasuke. There's nothing you can say to me. You betrayed me too, but that's okay. The smirk that showed up on Sasuke's face worried the Hatake. Because you're the one who gave me a jutsu to help kill the ones who killed my family. Sasuke's hand tenses and lightning sparks into his sword. Kakashi's eyes widened at the speed of the nature transformation and really at the feat in of itself as his kunai caves to the pressure of the elemental jutsu. His sword sliced through the kunai, but Kakashi was able to charge his hand up with lightning and grab the sword, saving himself from getting sliced into pieces. Kakashi was about to just say screw it and overpower the teen, but Aoba suddenly appeared behind Sasuke, surprising him. That's enough. I won't let this foolish skirmish continue. He yelled out, aiming his sword so that it would slice through Sasuke and eliminate him. Aoba. Wait. Kakashi tried, sensing a build-up in chakra from Sasuke. But it was too late. Chidori stream. Lightning shot out of him from every angle, easily catching the glasses-wearing Jounin and frying him like food. He landed on the ground with a thud, mouth wide open, and Kakashi could tell he was paralyzed. I thought I made it clear you were not to interrupt. Orochimaru mused. Since you broke the end of your deal, it's my turn. Two shinobi broke out of the crowd and landed in front of a sweating Ganma who immediately got on guard upon seeing them. Wait, he thought. I recognize these two. They were from the last Chunin exam. One fought Sasuke and the other fought Kankuro. It seems you recognize us. Yari stated, smirking. He took out a kunai, making his intentions clear. Try and make this fun for me. The sound ninja rushed forward and Ganma found himself already on the back foot, hard-pressed to block the lethal strike that would seen his neck split open like fruit. He had no time to set himself when that same arm had quickly moved and wrapped around his own. The grip was tight, he found out. His arm was already starting to bruise and he probably had a couple of seconds before a bone would break. Ganma wasn't one to praise all that much, but he had to admire how the younger shinobi captured him so fast and put him in this sort of predicament. That was no easy task. Meters away, Kakashi began to feel the effects of the lightning coming into contact with his skin. He had managed to hold on somehow, but now his skin was boiling and he could feel the blisters beginning to boil. He looked up into Sasuke's raging black orbs and he mentally apologized to his student. His chakra activity skyrocketed in a fraction of a second and suddenly his lightning simply overpowered Sasuke despite it coming from his entire body. Sasuke groaned in pain, forced back, and Kakashi wasted little time, slamming his foot into Sasuke's abdomen and sending him flying back into a tree. Sasuke's back bounced off of it sharply and the tree shook violently, some of its roots coming from underneath the ground from the force. He landed on his hands and knees, trying to force air back into his lungs. Kakashi thought on his toes, quickly turning and launching a kunai at the arm wrapped around Gunma. Yari saw it and grit his teeth in anger as he was forced to let go of his target and leap away a safe distance. Gunma immediately tended to his arm with a pained grimace on his face, and a single glance at it told him that Gunma wouldn't be able to fight with that arm anytime soon. Kakashi blinked at the rise of a familiar chakra signature and turned to see the special eyes of a nearly deceased clan. Sasuke had switched on his Sharingan and Kakashi didn't realize he was looking directly into those eyes until it too late. His eyes widened unnaturally, so much so that vein inside of it spread in the white of his eye. His surroundings turned dark suddenly and he found himself surrounded by blades and saws and stuck to a pole, thick ropes wrapped around him. Genjutsu. He had fallen to Sharingan Genjutsu. But it wasn't for long. Kakashi had spared against Obito nearly all his life and worked close with the Uchiha. Sasuke wasn't nearly on their level with the Sharingan, he would be able to break out of it. He raised his chakra all around his body yet again and let it all out at once in the form of lightning, electrocuting himself. It was a harsh method, yes, but it was the fastest and he was already coming back to the real world. Unfortunately, he hasn't a break as Sasuke rushed at him swiftly and the movement looked almost nothing like he thought his student to be capable of. Sword drawn, the Uchiha had almost been able to cut through him, but Kakashi was faster. He had been able to lift his headband from over his eye to better see the Uchiha and used the metal on his glove to deflect the strike. Once more, they were locked in a battle of strength. "Alright Sasuke, that's enough," Orochimaru said, voice echoing through the clearing. Sasuke hadn't listened, but Orochimaru didn't take kindly to that and flashed his sinister chakra through the clearing. "Sasuke, I need you healthy for the exams." "That's enough." Sasuke seemed to snap to attention at that and leaped back away from the Konoha Jounin. Kakashi let out a breath he didn't know to be holding and stared down his student as he landed a couple of meters opposite of him. The Oto ninjas seemed to listen as well, as they leaped to Sasuke's side. Orochimaru smiled in delight. "As you can see, Copy Ninja, this is the team I will be entering. You can refer to it as Team Sasuke." Orochimaru. His voice was calm, but it held a distinct edge that the Sannin couldn't miss. He was sure that was the intent anyway. His fist shook harshly, but clung to his side with will alone. "I won't start a war over you, but know this. You will pay for everything. You have it coming to you." The man did nothing but smirk, as if the mere threat didn't even cause a tingle in his back. "Oh, please. There's nothing that can stop me. Triple X. Training went well, I see." Gaara nodded to his older brother, walking down the long corridor from his training room so that he could freshen up before starting his nightly duties as Kazekage. It was exceptional. The puppet user grinned, arms crossed over his chest in relaxation, and he followed after his younger brother. "That's good. I know you have the stamina and all, but slow down. The first round of the Chunin exams start tomorrow and you have to be ready early in the morning. You should save the paperwork for another time." Gaara shook his head. "No, I'll do it tonight." He had nothing else to do other than try and sleep. While his tailed beast didn't give him trouble like it used to, he still found it hard-pressed to sleep. Old habits die hard, he supposed. They reached his room and Gaara opened the door and stepped inside the blank room. He walked to his dresser and listened to his brother speak as he went through it. Kankuro sighed. Once Gaara had his mind made up, it simply wasn't possible to change his mind. "Okay, Gaara. But at least try to get a couple of hours, for me. Things are just getting better for the village. We don't need anything to happen to you, not right after you boosted the overall morale of the village. There's no need to worry," Gaara assured, closing the drawer after finding what he wanted. "But if it makes you feel better, I will get some rest. Anyway, I'll be right back after I'm done." "Did Temari cook?" Kankuro nodded and went to leave the room. "Yeah, it's in the stove. I've already had my fill, so the rest is yours." Take care. He shut the door behind him and Gaara entered his bathroom, intent on getting rid of the sweat and dirt on his skin. Miles away, at the village single entrance, 3 shinobi walked, getting closer to the village. Pakora lightly raised the straw hat, hiding her face. It's all still the same. But she wondered how it would look scared by her unforgiving flames. Chapter 58. Stop right there! Asan Shunin yelled, in charge of guarding the gates the 3 shinobi were currently walking up to. He felt his team stiffen under him and felt as if he were missing something. Moonlight wasn't in abundance tonight, heavy clouds made sure of that, and from the way the moon was positioned in the sky it made it hard to see the 3 intruders beyond murky shadows. Still, he had an assignment. State your business. One of them stepped forward, the shortest one. His eyes quickly scanned the assembled shinobi silently before he decided to speak, after sending a discreet influx of chakra that only his team would understand. We are here to see the Kazekage. The Chunin frowned at the feeling creeping up on him. He felt like something was about to happen, and it wasn't just his chakra sensitivities talking. Lord Kazekage doesn't have any appointments. You will not be permitted inside without the proper documents. When the hunched-over man chuckled, the air between them seemed to shift. It almost felt like he was choking by the way his mouth closed up and his throat seized. Oh, well, that's just too bad. The Chunin signaled to his team that could deliver transmission to do so immediately, but they hadn't the chance to even move as white clay in the form of a centipede wrapped around them. He turned to them, completely surprised at what he was seeing. What is that? He asked in shock. He let out a scream that was silenced by a hand quickly and was able to look down as spots seemed to spread in his vision. He had been impaled through his abdomen by what seemed to be a metallic, scorpion-like tail. He knew of legends of those and sent dying eyes to the man who had silently slipped behind him. Sasori of the Red Sand. He tried to say under the palm of the legendary ninja, but he was shushed. Be quiet. Your last moments will be witnessing a true art form at its finest. He whispered dryly. Below them, standing idly, the blonde shinobi smirked and rested a single hand in a seal. Art is an explosion. X. A plume of smoke in the distance, notably at the entrance of the village, caught a heavily clad Sai's attention as he was in the middle of watching the Kazekage. From what he could sense, the chakra was something he hadn't felt before. It was potent. Like the end of it had deep reserves and none could produce this level of chakra except the Kazekage. While he wasn't a sensor, it was easy for him to sense chakra, especially the chakra of something as huge as Gaara's, which felt oceanic in comparison to the villages as a whole. He whipped out his scroll and ink brush, already beginning to draw a bird, intent on figuring out if the Akatsuki were behind this. If it wasn't, he wouldn't draw attention, but he doubted the security detail would be practicing ninjutsu instead of doing their jobs. The Konoha ninja hadn't been the only one to see the plume of smoke rising in the air. Kankuro muttered a curse under his breath, sensing that this would be trouble, and took him down the corridor to his room. He had a feeling he would need his puppets. X. Deidara smirked at his work, proud to see just how quickly these morons had gone down, all thanks to his art. But now he had bigger fish to fry. He reached into 2 pouches beneath his cloud-covered cloak, letting the forbidden jutsu in his hands chew the clay inside. Sorry, you too. He took his hands together and smirkingly formed a small clay bird. But I'll be taking on the Jinchuriki alone. If you want to beat me to the punch, you'll have to run through the village without alerting everyone. He threw the small bird, and a seal and a burst of smoke later revealed the bird now given life seemingly with chakra and larger than Deidara. He hopped onto the bird and took off, ignoring the warning Pakora issued at the plan he was messing up so blatantly. She watched with no emotion as the weakest member of their team flew off in the distance, into the heart of the village. That idiot. Sasori muttered and rushed in between the large cliff entrance of the village to follow after his teammate. She wondered how he dealt with the bratty blonde and followed after him. X. Sai glared in the sky from the shadow of a building, slightly shivering, but nevertheless able to hold against the freezing cold of the desert. He had been able to fully draw his bird and had been about to summon it, but a chakra moving toward the palace rapidly completely stopped his movements. It was large, almost as large as Gaara's own chakra, but it felt a great deal more refined. He was no Hyuga, but pulsing chakra to his eyes got him enough vision to see the red clouds covering the flying ninja. It was just like he thought. The Akatsuki. They didn't seem to care about Sudley at all, so they were either crazy strong or just plain crazy. But they had been silent enough not to alert the entire village, so he wouldn't call them crazy, at least not yet. He decided to stick to low ground. He had no doubt he would be spotted if he rode in the air along with the Akatsuki member. And he was sure he wasn't strong enough to contend against the S-class shinobi. Root training gave him a couple of ideas on how he would go about assassinating him though. He just needed to be patient. When Deidara reached the skies overlooking the palace, he made sure to stay high enough that scouting around the palace wouldn't be able to spot him this high up. He looked down toward the sandy ground, moving some of his hair out of the way to have his scope enhance his vision. He spotted 6 scouts, all in a type of formation that suggested the basis of a watchful eye on all sides of the Kage and having enough vision for the other to see their neighbor. That meant he would need to kill them all at once as to not alert any of them and risk waking the village up. The freezing cold, sharp wind smacking him in the face didn't stop the smirk that spread across his lips. A challenge for his art. Challenge accepted. Then he froze. Because a 7th shinobi he hadn't seen before stood atop the palace, staring directly at him. He knew that face. That was the Jinchuriki, the Kazekage. But Deidara still couldn't stop smirking. At least now he could be direct with his art. He didn't need to hide it. Kazekage-sama? What's going on? One of the guards for the palace asked after leaping on the roof after their leader. He followed Gaara's gaze to the sky but wasn't able to make out anything. Was he just stargazing? 3 intruders have gotten their was into the village. I want the entire village alerted, but I want none to help. I will fight them alone. Gaara said with authority, his mind made up on the matter. The gathered guards gasped, but seeing just how serious Gaara was knew that there was no room for disobedience and moved to follow orders immediately. Now let's see, Gaara thought intently, gazing directly at the bird soaring high in the air with chakra enhancing his eyes. What your approach will be. He wouldn't have to wait a single second longer as the white bird suddenly dived straight toward the palace, toward him. Gaara let his chakra do the work, not knowing his abilities and not willing to sacrifice anything to find out. Sand converged his position all around the palace, casting a long and big shadow across the entire palace. Quite protective, are you? Molding chakra into his clay and manipulation its shape only took a second before he threw them down, slightly slowing down his bird so that he wouldn't get caught in his own attack. Let's see what my C1 does against Gaara of the sand, MMM. The molds of clay transformed into miniature birds spearheaded down to the palace but didn't even make it halfway, a whip of the sand making sure of that. But substantial damage was done to the sand shield, so much so that he could see through it. It irked him to see the Jinchuriki staring voidlessly at him through the other side, unflinching from his attacks and unfrightened by his power. He would make the Jinchuriki regret he even had. He began more direct means, diving down toward him with no intention on using long range as cover. He could see that without the large amount of sand any other type would be ineffective against his attacks. He was surprised how fast it was though, as several tendrils of sand launched away from the main ones and came at him at what felt like lightning speed. Quite easily, he was forced back a distance, swerving, having to keep himself latched to his bird by summoning chakra to his feet. Gaara! Back below, on top of the Kazekage Palace, Kankuro had made it up fully geared but hadn't expected to see his brother with him. He must have sensed a disturbance, even inside the shower. He looked up the large amount of sand nearly surrounding the palace. He could tell Gaara was taking caution. Kankuro. He regarded, not turning away from the Akatsuki member high above as he continued to swivel, escaping the clutches of his sand. Stay out of this fight. Evacuate the elders instead. We have guards that can do that. Kankuro frowned. Why don't you want me to help? Shikaku told me it would be better to fight alone to keep myself less distracted. Kankuro narrowed his eyes. He didn't trust the advice the One-Tails told Gaara. He was the reason Gaara was drawn to insanity in the first place, and he laughed it all off as if it were only shits and giggles. And you're trusting him? No. Gaara answered immediately. He had been told of Shikaka's reason for driving him to insanity, and he hadn't trusted the Tanuki no matter what he said. But this was different, and he sounded definitively serious when he told Gaara that. But if it keeps you all out of danger, then I don't mind seeing it through. You don't have to do it all alone, Gaara. I'm here to help you. The whole village is. He tried to reason, but it went of deaf ears, and Gaara didn't even spare him a glance. I know, brother. But I will do this alone. They are after me. They had no more time to talk. Deidara had finally gotten past his tendrils of sand and was now rushing him, speeding through the air with incredible speed and with the ever-present confident smirk. Let's see how you respond, MMM. He reached into his pouch and his hands ate the clay, molding it swiftly. Sand came to meet him head-on, but it was no small tendril, it was a large hand and it was fast. He leaped off his bird and used the clay he had already made to make another one and soared away. He glanced behind him and threw up a seal. He swiveled around, his bomb detonated, destroying the hand in its entirety. Explosions. Gaara gathered, watching from afar. He decided right then to adjust his strategy accordingly. He pushed even more sand up from the streets below with nothing but his mind. It gathered up in a gigantic clump, and Gaara finally used the sand from his gourd to lift him up, moving the sand underneath his feet. He's planning ahead. Deidara realized after backing off to see what he would do with all the gathered sand. He was adding an extra layer over the village to protect it from an aerial assault that Deidara would be more than willing to send. But that won't matter. Worthless sand won't protect this village from my art. Nothing can. This is as far as you'll go. Deidara turned behind him to look at a blank-faced Kazekage with crossed arms. Oh, is it, Triple X. Damn it, Gaara. You don't have to do it all on your own. A frustrated Kankuro muttered under clenched teeth, anger nearly causing him to try and rip open the sand barrier covering the entire village. Movement to his right distracted him briefly, and he turned to see a familiar face. Sai? He questioned, confused. What are you doing here? It seems you know of the situation. He sent his gaze upward to view the covered sky. But none of that matters unless we find a way out. Kankuro clicked his teeth in annoyance. He wished his brother would listen just one time. We can go underground, he said to Sai's surprise. We can go through where the reservoir under our village resides and go underneath the village. I doubt we'll be able to get through with normal methods if Gaara even half-tried with fortifying the sand. Sai nodded in agreement. Sound like a PL dash. He paused when a dot in the distance soared high above them, going directly at the sand barrier as if it were going to go through it. Sai felt chakra from the man and knew it was a shinobi, but wondered the sanity they had to have lost just having going at it like that. Who is that? Fifth gate, gate of closing. Open. A voice boomed, and that chakra's signature, once a cool blue, was now a raging green. The person slammed into the sand barrier but wasn't able to pierce it the first time, so a flurry of punches began their ear-piercing rumble. It's Rock Lee. A voice answered a question he had not expected to be answered. Sai turned to see Niji and Shino, and from the sound of it, Niji had been the one to answer. His Byakugan active, he was looking straight up at his teammate. He's making good progress breaking through the barrier, he informed, and shut off his Byakugan to look at Sai. It won't be long before he reaches the other side, and Gaara's already engaging that Akatsuki member. Then we need to get up there and help, Kankuro decided. The faster we bring them down, the faster we learn more about them. That won't be necessary, Shino said, shaking his head. Those two should be able to handle that Akatsuki member. What we should worry about is the other two that have snuck their way into the village. Kankuro looked reasonably surprised, and so was Sai, whose mouth opened agape slightly. There's more of them? Niji nodded gravely. Yes, but they aren't traveling together, for some reason. I've tried to make sense of it. If they intend to only capture Gaara, why didn't they come together to do it? Essentially, they were now out of the fight because of Gaara. They may be after his family as well? Sai suggested. No. Niji shot down with a shake of the head. It was more than that. If they were, they would have been here way before reinforcements could back them up. They've been after Naruto before while he was with Master Jiraiya, and they never tried to kill him explicitly. Well, their goal isn't to destroy the village. Kankuro looked down upon his large village, nothing out of the ordinary. Not even a building out of place. Then we can only infer. Shino commented. They either aren't working together or the others have some new goal they've made no one aware of.
Söthen, what de Ovideo? Kankuro asks. Nii looks at him.
We wait. He says simply, and turns back to the covered sky. Chapter 59. High in the sky stood two adversaries. Two strengths. Two ninja. One was smirking, amused at the Jinchuriki for fighting him, but still waits to see if he has any tricks on his sleeve. It will be a futile effort though, but if he gets to showcase his art then it'll be worth it in his book. The other, on the other hand, wasn't thinking of anything. He'd already heeded his tailed beast's warning and protected the village. His chakra was slowly draining, but it was a small price to pay. He had plenty of it after all. This was only a minor inconvenience for him. I hope you plan to make this interesting, Deidara says, noticing that look on Gaara's face. I didn't get you all alone just to beat you easily. You have a reputation that I want to squander, so you can't go down so easy. Gaara didn't visibly react. Just because I don't show it doesn't mean I don't have intent to destroy you with everything I have. You're a fool. You come into my home turf like you own the place and then expect to win when I have the complete advantage of everything around me. So, Deidara counters. You think because you can throw all this sand around that you have the advantage? You know nothing about what I can do, so don't get full of yourself. You shouldn't say such things. You are the one who split from your teammates to fight me alone. You say you know about my reputation. If you truly knew the full extent, you would not be so willing to put yourself in danger. Deidara scowls. Are you saying that I should be afraid of you or something, you punk? Without even a gesture from its creator, the clay bird rushes forward at the Kazekage. Gaara barely spared a glance at it before sand shoots up in front of him like a wall. Deidara is barely able to stop himself and, with a flap of the wings, he shoots away from the wall but not before throwing small bombs at it. He smirks and forms a seal. Ha! The explosion is much more powerful than Gaara guesses and he is sent back by the force of it, his special sand coming up to defend him from the actual explosion, but the force of it nearly pushed him onto his giant sand barrier. When Gaara came to, Deidara was rushing in yet again. Die! He yelled, grinning madly. Gaara heard loud squawking and saw even more smaller clay birds coming to rush him. Enough of this. Gaara decided. A slab of sand shot in front of him and a multitude of smaller balls of sands shot out from it. Sand shower barrage. The small balls smashed into the claybirds and sent them flying down, away from him. TCH, so he's got ranged attacks like that as well, huh? I was hoping I wouldn't have to resort to anything too drastic, besides C2, but I might have to use C3 as well. Deidara muttered. He flared his chakra, blue spiritual energy coming smoothly out of his body. It was warm. Gaara noticed the chakra increased and backed away to gain space, wanting to see what he was planning by building all of that chakra up. You've proved to be a worthy opponent, Jinchuriki. He clasped his hands together, his chakra surging to new heights. But this is the end for you. Deidara leaps off his clay bird just as it rushes head on to Gaara. Gaara lifts his arm at the bird and his sand followed his movements, forming into an arm and grabbing the bird out of the sky. A plume of smoke erupting caught Gaara's attention and by the time he turned to it, he could already see what looked to be a sort of dragon made out of clay. It was definitely bigger than the clay bird that he was holding onto. Even more techniques, eh? Gaara expected a challenge, but he could tell that this was nowhere near his full power. I might have to draw from Shikaku's power. He has more chakra than I do without the beast. Heh, you're drawing from your tailed beast, I was under the impression that you wouldn't use your ultimate weapon. At least, that's what Intel is telling me. Deidara said, smirkingly, feeling the power being drawn to the red head. Gaara didn't feel like indulging in the blonde. Go ahead and attack already. Do what you're here to do. He was annoying enough with his explosions. He didn't need him to talk needlessly as well. Badly. Gaara heard loud squawking and saw even more smaller clay birds coming to rush him. TCH. Deidara gritted his teeth and his C2 dragon's mouth gaped open. You don't need to tell me. Take this. A miniature version of the dragon shot out of its mouth and dove down towards Gaara. These projectiles are not fast enough to get me. Gaara stated matter-of-factly, raising a single hand up. A large hand made of sand rose up and tried to grab at the dragon, but as soon as it touched the hand it exploded on impact. Gaara hadn't seen this coming and was forced back by the concussive force as well as temporarily blinded by just how bright the explosion was. Deidara quickly raised up a seal with a large grin on his face. And for the second one. His clay bird Gaara was holding was the next to explode out of nowhere, and with it he was finally knocked out of the air due to how close and disoriented he was. With a grunt, he slammed into his own sand barrier, almost breaking his neck as he had landed on his head. Deidara smirks once more and reaches into his pouch for more clay, an idea forming in his head. Don't think that's all there is to my art. I have plenty more left to show you. Gaara struggles to make it to his feet. His senses are still everywhere and his vision is nearly double since being blinded not only once, but twice. He's having a hard time even focusing on white goo forming in front of him. Wait, white goo? He blinks multiple times to get his vision back straight, and when it comes back the goo or now what he knows is clay has formed into some monstrosity that one would probably find in Konoha's infamous Forest of Death. Above him, he hears a gleeful chuckle from his adversary. My art is wonderful, isn't it? I've been letting you go on easy mode. Now you'll truly feel my art. Defiantly, Gaara looks up at Deidara. I don't give a damn about your art. He says. That struck a chord. An evil, almost constipated grin set on Deidara's face and veins popped on his forehead when his face turned red. He looked like an angry, puffed-up blowfish. Then die. He roars. His attention was forced to leave Deidara when the huge monstrosity wobbled over to him. He wondered if he should have ever truly worried about this thing, but when his sand sliced the thing in half and it split into its own creation, he knew that this would not be a walk in the park. On his command, sand rose up from the barrier they stood upon and grabbed a hold of their uneven forms, rendering them immobile. Well, briefly. Gaara was even shocked when they began to seep through the sand no matter how big or small the crack to get out. Gaara holds a hand out before squeezing it tight. Sand burial. He expects the sand to crush the remaining clay still inside the sand, and while it does that, it doesn't immobilize the clay. Individually, 30 smaller strands of the first gigantic clay come back to live and stand before the Kazekage. How small can they go before they are destroyed? Gaara mutters in what seems to be disbelief almost. Ha-ah-ah-wa-ea. With a strained yell, a green figure slammed through the sand where all 30 of the small clay figures were, completely destroying them. Gaara was surprised, eyes widened and all. He had some of his attention focused on making a part of his sand barrier stronger where someone was breaking through. He should have realized that it could have been a comrade. I didn't think I would see you, friend. The person before him smiled, getting into an all too familiar stance. He stared confidently at his opponent. TCH, and who are you supposed to be? Deidara asks, frowning. He wanted the Kazekage one-on-one. I'm the devilishly handsome, hard-working green beast of Konoha. Rock Lee. Triple X. Sakura gasps in surprise, suddenly coming awake from a recurring nightmare. She's breathing hard and puts a hand on her chest to somehow try and alleviate it. Her body barely recognizes it. Before she could calm herself down naturally, she sees someone else in the room is up as well, staring out the window. She recognizes her instantly, but is confused. Tayuya? With a grimace on her face, the redhead turns to her. Get everyone up, Sakura. Something is going down. Something bad. Triple X. Rock Lee has reached the Kazekage. Niji informs, looking up and seeing through the sand barrier with his Byakugan. Kankuro releases a sigh of relief. Thank you. With his help I'm sure things will go smoothly from now on. Yes, if they can synchronize their effort. Niji says, turning to him. If not, then they will lose rather horrifically. Kankuro couldn't hold his surprise. What do you mean? What I mean is that Rock Lee is more than likely to just straight on attack an opponent he would find interesting, and he should find that in that Akatsuki member. If he gets himself in trouble, Gaara will come in to try and save him. If they fight like that, they will lose. Then, what do we do? Sai asks. Niji smirks. We wait. Niji is the first to turn before several feet land atop the Kazekage Palace. It's a team of shinobi. Sakura, Ino, Tenten, Kiba, Tayuya, Choji, Shikamaru, and Hinata. All of them have heard the commotion and are ready to join the fight. Kiba is the first one to reach the smaller group, jogging. What's going on? Is that Gaara's sand? Calm down. Niji tells them, deactivating his Dujitsu. For now, the situation is under control. Gaara and Rock Lee are fighting an Akatsuki member above that sand barrier. Akatsuki? Hinata mutters, surprised. They're here? Kiba asks. But how did they get in so fast? It's simple. Shino says. They might have an ability to get them here without being noticed. All we do know is that they came from the entrance of the village. Behind them, that black plume is now almost completely gone. When Sakura turns back from it, she asks, but if that can be seen from a distance, how did they manage to get all the way here without interference? Wait, Shikamaru interrupts. I keep hearing they. He looks over at Niji. How many are fighting Gaara? Just one. Sakura could almost sigh in relief at that before Niji said his next words, bringing a chilling atmosphere to an already cold night. But there are two more, lurking somewhere in this village. I've yet to locate them with my Byakugan. Shikamaru is the first to speak from that deafening silence. Damn. We gotta do something. But what? Ino blurts, stepping before the group. We can't help Gaara, he's got us blocked out. And if Niji can't find him with his eyes, how are we supposed to find them? There's a lot of us. If we fan out into different parts of the village, we should be able to find them. Kiba suggests. Truthfully, it was a good idea, but unfortunately one of the teens thought of something that could very well change the way of the outcome. That's only assuming that their goal is to help their partner capture Gaara. Shino says, silencing the group's agreement with the plan. If we split off, that could potentially what they want. I'm sure that if they wanted to get to Gaara, they've no need to hide themselves. It's likely they have another goal. He's right. Shikamaru immediately agrees but decides to reiterate. Well, you both are. We should all split into two groups and search a section of the village. Since we all are from the same village, we'll leave Kankuro here to guard the palace in case they slip past us. If you see them, try not to engage and signal another group so that group can signal another and so on and forth. That's the best we can hope for. Any questions? Yeah. It was Tenten who wore a smirk. Whose team am I on? Triple X. Damn it. I knew I had a bad feeling about something, and now this. Temari glances up at the large sand barrier, hoping her little brother to be okay. Before she could hop to another sand building, a small spark catches her attention right before it explodes in her face, nearly knocking over the building she was about to jump off of. Able to dodge it, Temari leaps out of the smoke and lands safely on the sandy road with an angry grimace on her face. Whoever had the galls to attack her was a dead man at the moment. "Who's there? Show yourself?" she demands, taking the war fan off her back and holding it in front of her like a weapon. "Normally, the ones I try to kill already know me, but you weren't around when that happened to me." Temari's head snaps toward the sound of the voice, coming from where she just was, in a dark smoke. But slowly, her form reveals itself until she can see someone thought to be dead. "Hello, Lady Temari. My name is Pakura." Her multicolored hair swayed in the wind. "I'm here." She points at the blonde with a deadly glare. "For you." Chapter 60. Rock Lee and Gaara stood before Deidara, each shinobi staring into the other's eyes. It was a standoff, one waiting for the other to move. Wind blew into the area, picking up light objects. "Hee, I didn't expect to fight anyone but the Kazekage. I didn't think anyone would be crazy enough to oppose me but him," Deidara said, standing tall on his C2 dragon. "You won't have your way," Gaara declared, lifting his arms into the air. "It's all over for you." "He's right." Rock Lee smirked. "We've got you numbered." Deidara grinned madly and he held up a seal. "We'll just see about that." In rapid succession, C2 dragon bombs launched out of the larger one's mouth, aiming to kill. Rock Lee leaped out of the way before Gaara's sand came up to grab a hold of the bombs. Slightly above him, Deidara felt a shift of the wind, and when he turned he saw Rock Lee, who had green sparks flowing off him. "Third gate, gate of life, open." Chakra pulses out of him wildly, in every direction. With a roaring yell, his face turns red and veins start protruding out of his forehead when his hair sticks up. "Die!" Deidara yells, launching small balls that explode the instant they reach Rock Lee. "That won't work." Rock Lee yells, launching himself out of the smoke at Deidara as if he were a rocket. His eyes widen at the speed and he tries to turn his C2 dragon around but is surprised when sand wraps around it out of nowhere. "What?" he mutters. Below him, Gaara's holding an arm up in his direction. "You won't be going anywhere." Before he could react, a fist slams into his face and sends the mercenary ninja flying on the fist of Rock Lee. Lee went to slam his other fist into Deidara's gut, but when it went through his stomach, he didn't expect it. He looked on in shock as the man turned white and he finally noticed that the man wasn't, well, a man. But it was too late. Deidara broke free from his C2 dragon meters away with a smile before holding up a seal. "Be gone!" The sky lit up when a large explosion sounded through the night sky. Gaara looked on in shock before regaining his senses and clasping his hands together. Shikaku hands. A hand even larger than the ones he could make by himself wrapped around the dragon, its black claws at the end digging into its sides. Deidara paid it no mind, leaping off the dragon and releasing a small clay bird before it erupted into a big one. But before it could even reach, Gaara could only see a black blur slam into it and he was forced to shut his eyes when wind blasted into his face from the impact. It was Rock Lee in all his might, a little scratched up but otherwise fine from taking the full brunt of the explosion. "Don't count me out." Gaara smirked before tightening his hand into a fist. Sand burial. His enhanced sand that was wrapped around the dragon squeezed until it was forced to desummon itself, blowing up in a puff of smoke. He was going to make sure to limit how he could attack. Deidara was furious as he swerved past the smoke on another clay bird. Rock Lee was making up for Gaara's speed that he had been exploiting and it was making him sick. He was surely going to beat Gaara had he not stepped in. It was like fighting that damn Uchiha all over again. Gaara wondered what his next move would be as he swerved past the smoke, gritting his teeth. He held up his hand and several tendrils of sand shot at the explosion user. He wasn't going to let him catch a break. "Rock Lee!" he yelled to gain the other's attention. "Don't let him catch a break. Since we've broken through one of his attacks, he should be vulnerable right now." Right. Lee nodded and shot off the sand barrier, putting a small crater from the impact of it. Deidara looked behind him when he heard a familiar sound and grimaced in annoyance when he saw the tendrils of sand getting closer and closer to his bird. Damn pest! With a quick swing of his hand, multiple clay bombs were in the air, in the tendrils' path. Gaara saw this, however, since he saw it so much, and the tendrils swerved down, completely missing the clay bombs. But now they were too far away to catch up with Deidara. Deidara saw this. Ha! What's your plan now, MMM? Fourth gate, gate of pain, open. Those were all the words Deidara could hear before he was sent flying tens of several meters away with a punch to the face. Deidara didn't even feel it though, since his senses were knocked all over the place. The only thing he could feel was the wind all on his back from how fast he was soaring through the air. He was trying so hard to open his eyes, and when he finally managed to get it open, he only saw Rock Lee in front of him, staring intensely. This is the end. Deidara watched in shock as the Leaf Shinobi literally dematerialized in front of him before he was hunched over violently when another powerful fist smashed into his stomach. His head nearly came off his shoulders when a kick slammed into the side of it from behind him, sending him flying away. He had the chance to barely breathe when a fist crashed into his side violently and sent him flying in another direction. Was he teleporting? There was no way. The hit sped up, and soon, Deidara could barely keep up where exactly he was being hit, as it was just too fast. Then something wrapped around him continuously, after every hit, and as soon as he felt it, his instincts told him to release the last remaining bombs he had made for the tendrils earlier. He got lucky as the Rock Lee materialized right in front of the bombs. He noticed them right away and disappeared until he was on the other side of the Deidara, holding onto the bandages rather awkward from being thrown off path. Sand whipped in front of the bombs Deidara had threw before and wrapped into a thick ball that would contain the blast. Go on, Lee. Finish him. Rock Lee heard loud and clear, and of so fast that most of his body appeared as a blur. He would make this final hit the hardest so he could use his final technique to finish him. He saw his opponent didn't try to move, and he slammed a fist so hard at his body that it went through its stomach. But he felt it before. This was no human, this was I. A clay clone. The real Deidara laughed, falling out of the air. You fell for it twice, you fool. Rock Lee couldn't gain any distance because his hand was stuck in the clone that he couldn't pull out despite his immense strength. Ha! Instantly, the clone exploded. But it was the largest explosion Deidara had done since this battle. He had packed so much chakra in it that it barely beat his C2 bombs, and Lee was in the epicenter of it. Lee! Damn it! Gaara cursed, using sand to soar through the air to try and find the taijutsu user. Out of a huge plume of black smoke, Gaara saw Rock Lee falling out of it, a blood trail following his descent. Before he could go over, a puff of smoke erupting closer to him took his attention. It was Deidara on yet another clay bird. TCH, he decided he would go and save Rock Lee instead of engage the explosion user and race to do so. Lee nearly fell on his head before a rope of sand caught his leg and lowered him slowly onto the sand barrier. Gaara wasn't far behind, and when he saw the injuries on Lee, he knew he would not be able to fight for at least a day. He hoped he was wrong though. He commanded his sand to wrap around any blood leaking off the Leaf Ninja to keep blood loss at a minimum. Deidara looked down on the Kazekage with a growing smirk full of malice. He'd just gotten rid of his biggest annoyance, and now it was time to finish the other one off as well. He held his C3 bomb before himself, reveling in its beauty and wanting to see just how perfect that explosion would be. One Tails! He yelled out to get Gaara's attention. It's time for you to witness true art. Art that will be the very last thing you see. Revel in it. Embraces it. He dropped the bomb and it grew in size almost instantly and opened up into previously closed arms until they were fully diagonal. Because art. Gaara looked on at complete shock at it as his sand automatically came to his protection. Is an explosion. Before he was completely covered, he saw something stand in front of him before the large bomb went off. It was so big and explosive that the huge segments of the sand barrier collapsed, nearly killing civilians if it hadn't dispersed before hitting the ground. Several kilometers away, rocked from the explosion, and buildings in the sand village began to collapse from the intense shaking. It was like nothing they'd ever felt before. But amongst that devastation, one teen stood before that explosion. Gara lowered part of his sand shield and saw someone he'd be on the lookout for during the Chunin exams. "Sorry, I'm late to the party." She grinned, and Gara could have sworn he saw Naruto in her for a quick second when she turned to him. "Oh, you're the Kazekage, right? My name's Fu. Isn't this an exciting first meeting? We're definitely friends now, right? Right? Triple X." Temari recognized that face. She was supposed to be dead. So how come she was here? And part of the Akatsuki? None of this was making sense. "You're surprised I'm alive, right?" Her voice sounded cynical, and Temari could tell she was after her for something personal. "I'm not surprised. The way the sand uses its shinobi never changes. Even now, they made a Jinchuriki Kazekage. They made Gara Kazekage and expected it to work. The fools you are." She laughed at the end, and Temari glared at her. "Don't you dare make fun of my brother. He's the best Kazekage the sand has seen ever. And yet there's not many good ones to choose from. If he's not killing his own shinobi, then he's certainly better than Raza." "Is that why you're here?" Temari asked, trying to piece what she was missing together. "Don't blame the mistakes of another on someone else. My father is dead. You want to blame someone that had nothing to do with it?" "I'm not blaming anyone. Rather, I blame the system in place here. The fact that a shinobi as loyal as I was, killed to appease another nation, and then it's covered up while dragging my name through the mud is even possible is the problem. Something like that needs to go." She was getting more and more riled up, and Temari held up her fan defensively. "Calm down," she warned. "It's this whole system that is fucked up. Calm down." "Shut up." Drunk off rage, Bakura released an explosion that would have seared the skin off of Temari had she not opened her fan and gave it a mighty swing. Almost like a mini tornado, strong wind circled the sand shinobi, saving her from the superheated flames. From such a quick use of chakra, Temari stood there to catch her breath but kept her eyes peeled on the black smoke in front of her. She would not let an attack hit her. She read up on Bakura when searching through archives and got curious when she came across her file. She was dangerous, and one attack was all it took for the battle to be over. Once more, she waited patiently for the smoke to clear. She wasn't going to rush. She had no need to. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Her eyes widened in surprise when a sizable fireball escaped the smokescreen nearly faster than Temari could see. It was nearly, however, and she was able to leap away and land on the side of a building. She felt a shift and looked up to the air to see Bakura approaching her quickly. She let her fan in and was able to put it above her to block a kunai the other kunoichi brought out. They were locked in a deadlock. Neither had an edge, well at first. When Temari's arms began to bend and she could barely muster the strength to hold them up, she began to panic a small bit. What the hell? How's she so strong? She was gritting her teeth now, pouring all her strength to fight back against the force of a single kunai. How was this possible? She didn't know. But she knew she wouldn't allow this woman to beat her. You're nothing but a worthless, ignorant child. Bakura sneered. Ignorant of the mistakes of your family and quick to fall in line. Temari's face tightened in barely restrained anger. Don't try and act like you have the moral high ground. Joining some group and hunting down Jinchurikis like animals. You're no better than the people you try and put down. That's it. I've had enough of this. Bakura pushed her fan into the building with a quick burst of speed, leaving Temari shocked. She snapped out of it though and made a grab for her signature weapon only to be stopped when a fist smashed into her face. She was sent crashing into a wall, nearly knocking it over. She slid down it, falling to her knees as she tried to regain her senses. Vision blurry, she could barely see the blood leaking off her own face. Not so tough without your weapon, eh? Pakura made a grab for it, but the second she touched it, she noticed blood drawn across it. A second later, and she was forced to leap back to dodge a weasel carrying a scythe that nearly sliced her throat open. She landed back down on the sandy road below and narrowed her eyes at the animal. What the hell is that? Hat on her feet, Temari whipped the line of blood of her lip and grabbed her war fan with a smirk. This is Kamatari, my summon. With him here, your loss is almost guaranteed. You think a little weasel is going to help you fight me? What naivete! A ball of flame appeared in one her open palms while she used her other one to hold up a seal. Scorch style, searing floating lanterns. Temari gaped openly as the sizable ball of fire split up from each other and floated up to where she was, surrounding her before she could even move out of the way. They're fast. I could barely see them just now. Time to teach you a lesson. Pakura sneered. Immediately afterwards, one of the flame balls came at Temari from behind. She heard it though and moved quickly, turning and swings her fan at it harshly. Wind pushed at it harshly, but instead of disappearing like Temari expected, it just bounced off her jutsu as if she hadn't thrown it in the first place. Wait. What the hell? Here's another one. Pakura yelled. As if on command, a second ball flung itself at her from the side, but instead of trying to deflect it, she leaped out of the way. Damn it! She's moving them without any indication. I won't be able to find a pattern. She gasped once more when all 6 of the balls came at her at once. You won't get me! She yelled, twisting herself midair. Wind style, spinning whirlwind. With a quick swing of her fan, wind was thrown all around her, blowing the balls of course and saving her from being burned away. Temari felt a noticeable dip in her chakra, not enough to take her out of battle, but enough to warrant concern. Damn! She thought as she landed on the ground. I can keep wasting my chakra defending like this. I'll have to go on the offensive if I want to win. She looked up as all the balls of flame began to surround her once more. Lady Temari. A voice said from below her. She looked down to see that it was her personal summon. It might be possible to get rid of those flame balls, but it will take my sacrifice to do so. No. Temari immediately refused. I won't sacrifice a comrade. There has to be another way. There very well may be. He said and resigned. But that will require your chakra. Her chakra reserves far exceed yours. You won't make it far if you use any more unnecessarily. TCH, then what do you suppose? Temari asked after a second's debate. She could no longer argue if their opponent was nearing anyway. She still didn't like it though. Finally, she heard Pakura's footsteps. She had walked here. As if she wasn't even good enough to be chased. Seems you didn't go as far as I thought you would. You think I'm going to run from you? Temari retorted. Please. Don't flatter yourself. Don't get distracted, Lady Temari. Kamatari whispered. I'm not. She whispered back. I'm only keeping her distracted. You're going to rile her up. Kamatari said. But listen, here's the plan. I don't know what you two are up to. Pakura yelled, interrupting the weasel summon. But it won't be enough to defeat me, so I won't waste either of our times. She said and went through several seals in quick succession. Kamatari reacted quickly, leaping on Temari and climbing all the way up to her shoulder. Back up. Above you. He warned. Temari briefly looked up and saw the balls were glowing brighter than usual. She followed her summon's instructions and leaped back, and just in time. From each ball, a beam exploded onto true ground, and in the center of it she saw that the ground was evaporating as if it weren't there in the first place. Swing your fan as hard as you can. He instructed as soon as she landed safely on the ground. Trust me. TCH, fine. But you better have a reason for this. She lifted her arms once more and gave her fan another mighty swing. At the same time, the summon leaped forward into the wind and charged chakra into the blade. Secret technique, Weasel Sickle Cyclone. The summon spun itself rapidly and swung its sickle at the same time. The wind absorbed the motion and transformed the normal technique into a spinning whirlwind that cut through everything in the vicinity. Building and homes were sliced in half and the road separating the two sides split open. Bakura was visibly surprised at the technique. I had no idea she had a technique of such a caliber. She could form no more thoughts as the whirlwind of blades swept her up. Forced into midair, deep cuts formed on her body in nearly every spot and her pain screams could be heard from outside the jutsu. Temari panted as dust covered the entire street all the way down several blocks. Did I win? Triple X. Interesting. Niji muttered. He'd never expected the Akatsuki duo to split up on targets. Temari's likely in trouble if she's fighting that Kekkei Genkai user. But Shikamaru and Shoji are heading in that direction, so they should come as support soon. I heard that. Tenten stated, running closer up beside him. What do you mean interesting? What's going on? Niji turned his gaze back forward as they continued to run through their section of the village. One of the Akatsuki have engaged Temari southwest of our position. Wait, aren't Shikamaru and Shoji heading that way? She asked after a confused stupor. Niji nodded. Yes. They should help her out. But we have to stay out at least until the other Akatsuki member is found. Tenten had a question to ask, but she couldn't even get out before she was suddenly taken off her feet as the ground below them began to shake uncontrollably. She gasped when she lost her footing and began to fall of the building, but Niji saved her by grabbing her hand just in time. Got you. Niji muttered. What's going on? Tenten yelled out. She would go unanswered as the building began to collapse and Niji slid off the building. In mid-fall, Niji tugged Tenten toward him after righting himself and landed on the ground before leaping forward to dodge a large piece of the building that would have crushed them. What's going on? He thought, letting go of his teammate and holding a seal before him. Byakugan. He stretched his vision out several kilometers away and saw that nearly every building in the sand village was collapsing and huge parts of Gaara's sand barrier were falling to the ground. And it was all caused by an explosion that had come from Deidara. Niji had seen that chakra before. Did I let things get too far? Chapter 61. I felt that. Deidara thought as his jutsu began to calm down and everything grew silent. Something jumped in front of my attack and limited its effect. But I didn't sense anyone approach until they were already there. So, what's going on? In the dense smoke and sand particles, Gaara released his defense and caught Rock Lee before he fell down on his face. He's hurt. Fu noticed and flew over to Gaara's side. Gaara had noticed the wings and had finally been able to connect on how she had been able to protect him from the attack. He knew her face, but now he could feel her power. You're the Jinchuriki from the waterfall village, right? She nodded, but her attention was focused on the injured Rock Lee. She clasped her hands together and a thick, green web full of chakra formed when she separated her palms. This will heal him. She explained and set the web on the Rock Lee's back. Immediately, his wounds began to heal to Gaara's surprise. He looked back up at the other Jinchuriki. Thank you. She gave a toothy grin and held out a peace sign. No problem. Gaara took a hold of Lee and hoisted the teen's arm over his shoulder before he turned back to Fu. We've gotta move. The man who attacked me is after-tailed beast. They may have not discovered that you were applying this year. Okay. But I can't really see anything. She held a hand over her eyes and narrowed them. The fog's too dense. Gaara grunted and used one free hand to open a hole beneath the sand barrier a few feet away from them. We might not be able to see around us, but if we go under we should be okay. Fu looked like she had stars in her eyes. Wow. I didn't expect you to be so cool. But you are the Kazekage, so I don't know what I was expecting really. The teen was in the air now, her wings keeping her up. Oh, wait. Before I forget, we're friends now, right? Aren't we? Gaara could barely keep up with her. She was all over the place. Yes, we're friends, he said and held out a hand for her to shake. She looked at his hand curiously, floating slightly above it. What are you doing? Gaara raised an eyebrow. A handshake. That's what friends do. She brightened up instantly. Oh. She grabbed onto his hand and shook it so many times that his arm was beginning to feel weak. She was really excited. We're going to be the best friends ever. Triple X. Down below on Ground Zero, dozens of sand buildings were now nothing more than rubble, burying shinobi and civilians alike. Sakura lifted a sand wall that had survived the collapse off her and was able to get to her hands and knees. What the hell? What's going on? Sakura muttered, shocked at the devastation all around her. MMMMPH. MHMMMPH. Meters away from her, she heard a muffled voice, and it was then she remembered that she had a teammate with her. Tayuya! She raced over and began to frantically dig at the sand. It wasn't long until she was able to see Tayuya's hand sticking out of the sand, and she grabbed it, using her enhanced strength to drag out the former sound ninja. She popped out of the sand with a desperate gasp for air, sucking it in, and Sakura patted her back as she coughed violently. As she regained her breath, Sakura stood up and searched around their immediate area with her eyes. She saw nothing but collapsed sand buildings and giant molds of sand everywhere else. Even the streets were covered. Damn it! What the hell just happened? Tayuya asked, wiping the spittle off her lips. Geez, a thank you would be nice. Sakura thought, but knew that this wasn't exactly the time to speak up about it. I don't know. Everything just happened so fast, Hey, look! Tayuya interrupted, pointing up in the sky. Sakura looked up to see huge parts of the night sky showing through a broken sand barrier. She held her hand out from her to shield from the moonlight a bit. She hadn't realized just how dark it had been under Gaara's sand. That's Gaara's sand shield. But it's broken now? Sakura muttered with scrunched up features, confused. Whatever happened down here is probably because of something that happened up there. Tayuya said, getting to her feet. The Hyuga boy said that the Kazekage was up there. Her eyes narrowed at the sky above, and even she didn't want to think about what she was about to say. You don't think the Kazekage fell victim to that, right? I don't know, honestly. Sakura uttered, a bit nervous. But if so, then that isn't good. She fished something from her ninja pouch and held up in the air. After she added her chakra to it, the thing activated and a red flare shot high into the air, further illuminating the night sky. A red flare? Tayuya questioned, glancing at her. What was that for again? It's to signal distress. Sakura answered, tucking the flare back in her pouch. We might not be hurt, but we have to let the others at least know we're okay. I don't have any other colors with me, so I hope there's no confusion. Hope, ha! Tayuya muttered before banishing the thought. Anyways, if those Akatsuki won and captured the Kazekage, what exactly were we supposed to do? Neither of us have a way to get up there. I don't know. We'll just have to do our part on the ground and help rescue everyone else down here. Sakura answered. At this point, it's the most we can do. TCH, she clicked her tongue in annoyance. I don't really want to save any of these chumps, but I'd rather stick with you. She turned away from Sakura, crossing her arms. Lead the way, I'll be lookout. Sakura nodded. Okay. But before she could go off to find anyone, a loud yell interrupted her and both their heads snapped in the direction of the sound. What was that? Someone just got killed. I heard the person who yelled take their last breath. She grimaced, hard. And the person who caused it isn't too far away. But, his chakra is huge. It might be that other guy we're looking for. Sakura turned to her. How do you know all of that? I'm a sound ninja. My hearing is one of my best qualities," she said and leaped away in the direction of the sound. "Hey! Wait up!" Sakura called after her, leaping away. Triple X. Ghhh, ah! Tamari's eyes were shut tight as she held onto an injured arm. She breathed in and out heavily and tried to regain her senses. She hadn't felt anything like that ever, and she could confidently say that she wished she wouldn't again. She gripped her shoulder tighter when she felt that the blood was coming out a bit more freely. "Kamatari," she called out. "Are you still here?" "Yeah, he's still here," a voice called out. But it wasn't her summons. Her eyes snapped open and all at once, she took in the devastation of everything all around her. Nothing looked the same. How? What the hell is going on here? She stuttered, in disbelief of what her eyes were showing her. Her village, the one she'd been in her whole life, was gone, just like that. "Oh, don't start crying, there will be plenty of time for that later," Bakura mocked, stepping out of the shadows. Tamari glared at her through tears, seeing her summon trapped between her palm. What have you done?" Tamari demanded, stumbling to get to her feet and only managing to barely make it to her knees. Bakura chuckled and then sighed. "Calm down, princess. This isn't my doing. Though I will have to get Deidara back for doing my job for me." A look in her eyes briefly froze the Sand sibling. "I would have loved to watch the village burn." Her summon's voice hitched violently when she began to squeeze it. He tried to claw at her hands, but it was useless and she only increased the force, enjoying sound of its bones cracking. "No! Stop!" Tamari yelled, pushing herself almost on her feet. But they gave out and she fell harshly, landing on her face. Ugh! She gritted her teeth, her fist tightening as she laid sprawled on her stomach on the sandy ground. "Damn it!" Bakura chuckled sadistically, enjoying the pain of her junior. "This feels better than I ever could imagine." Eyes half-lidded, she slowly turned to look directly at her injured summon. "Why, you can still escape, Kamatari. Desummon yourself, right now." He struggled to speak between her palms, his words barely getting out. "I've been instructed to care for you, Lady Tamari, since you were a child. I will not abandon you." "Awi," Bakura cooed mockingly. "How cute. There's no point in trying to kill you if you can just puff away any time. So, go on ahead and desummon. I'd just love to deal with your summoner by myself." Kamatari, go, now. Before it's too late." Tamari pleaded against her body's wishes. It desperately wanted her to stop talking and rest. The summon struggled to make a decision. Either way, they would lose. Wait, his eyes widened, maybe they could win. Now that he noticed, deep cuts littered the woman's body, nearly rendering her cloak useless, hanging off her body on threads. Tamari already noticed it though. "Kamatari, I can win, she's injured, I'll find a way," so audacious laughter cut her off. Bakura laughed loudly, her voice carrying quite fluently over several miles. He. "Oh, I hadn't quite a laugh like that in a while." "Surely, you jest and that is not actually what you're clinging onto?" Tamari clenched a fist at her side over and over, the feeling in her body beginning to come back to her. It would only be a matter of time before she would be able to fight. She just had to stall, the woman was already injured. "Look up, princess." Tamari followed the directions and what she saw made her feel as though her heart were a balloon and what she was seeing was the needle. She felt her heart throb violently and her mouth gaped open. She could not believe what she was seeing. Above her, Bakura's wounds closed extraordinarily fast and before her eyes, she was healed completely and her chakra had took no change. She was just about as fresh as when she entered the battle. The pure shock on Tamari's face sent the Akatsuki member into a near-giggle fit. "So, I was right, huh? You put your entire hope that I would be injured enough for you to contend with me, only to find that I was playing you all along. I'm able to stop and start the process of healing on my own." I simply stopped it to get your reaction, and you did not disappoint. Tamari eat her head fall back onto the sandy ground dejectedly, no longer able to tell what she could do. Lady, Tamari? Kamatari muttered. Even he was surprised at that reaction. He'd never seen her anywhere close to this state. Are the Akatsuki really that deadly? Bakura looked at him in her hand. Oh, I forgot you were in my hand. Time to die or desummon. Choose wisely. With her other hand, she manifested a sizeball scorch ball and aimed it at the weasel. She smirked sadistically. Run, weasel, run. She mocked. I'm so sorry, Lady Tamari. It wasn't supposed to go like this. That was his final thought before he desummoned to save himself. He was coward. He didn't want to die. She dispelled her jutsu and brushed her hand off in disgust. Now, you. Come here. She walked forward and grabbed onto Tamari's hair. The night's still young. We've got even more crazy things to get into, so let your senior take care of you. Triple X. Gaara and Fu used their individual ways of getting to the ground safely while Gaara made sure Lee was secure and close by using his sand. When they reached the ground, it didn't take long for other villagers to notice them. Lord Gaara. Someone called out. Gaara turned behind him to see multiple villagers, all covered in soot from coming from under debris. Stay back. He ordered, holding a hand out. Stay in groups and go around to look for anyone in need of assistance. The Akatsuki are here, but I will be dealing with them. Any shinobi help evacuate civilians and spread my orders around. Round of sirs were given before they all rushed off to do their task, all worried about their leader but trusting his word that he would win. Wow, Fu marveled. You have a really good speaking voice. Thank you. He said a bit awkwardly, before standing up to full height beside his new friend. I need to find that Akatsuki member I was fighting. He's too dangerous to be left alone. Well, he could be anywhere right now. How are we supposed to find him with all this dust and stuff everywhere? Oi, Gaara. A voice called behind him. Gaara turned to see that it was Kiba who had called him, being followed by Akamaru and Shino. What the hell's going on? He asked after reaching them. It's the Akatsuki. There. A explosion took all of the shinobi by surprise and they all tumbled off their feet. In the middle of that explosion was Kankuro, who actually barely was able to evade it, skidding along to a stop by dragging all four of his limbs through the sand. Trying to gain his breath, he struggled to his feet as if weights were dragging him down, and watched as his adversary landed on a halfway collapsed building in the distance. So, you're the one who attacked my brother. His eyes glinted with rage. How dare you? The blonde raised his head, smirking viciously, and Kankuro couldn't tell if it was true amusement or pure craziness. What are you going to do about it, weakling? He held out his hand for the sand shinobi to see, and the mouth on his palm opened and started mocking him. Come make me pay, fool. A plume of smoke erupted afterwards and quickly revealed his three special puppets, all ready for battle. You're nothing but scum. Kankuro sneered. A filthy fool who doesn't have the decency to know when he's hurting innocent people, and for what power. Deidara looked at him in confusion, wondering why he was going off in the mouth so bad, but didn't care to say anything more about it. Kankuro watched the next hand signs he did carefully, noting it to be particularly Earth-style, which shouldn't have surprised him considering the line across his rock headband. Shut up and fight. Let's see who's stronger between both our arts. Whoa. Fu drawled, looking where she could feel all that chakra coming from and awestruck by it. She simply hadn't felt anything like it, being the physically strongest in her village. But she recognized one of the signatures. It's that guy you were fighting, Gaara. He's fighting someone else. You're a sensory ninja? Shino asked, the first to get to his feet. She also has some sort of link with insects. I can feel it. He thought. Whoa! Instantly, she was right in front of Shino with a starstruck look, finger pointed at him and nearly touching him between his covered eyes. Your chakra feels like mine. I'll handle him. The rest of you stay back. Gaara ordered, but it fell upon deaf ears when Kiba made it to his feet as well and stood in front of him. No way am I letting you fight alone. You've done enough of that. He turned down to his companion. You ready to go wild, Akamaru? The dog barked excitedly and his tail wagged viciously. See? There's no reason to go alone. We've got your back. Gaara stared at the animalistic shinobi in awe before smiling gently. He wanted to laugh. He could never understand why it felt so good to be surrounded by comrades. Then let's all go. Together. With that, the shinobi raced to the black plume of smoke in the distance and hadn't realized they were racing against time to save Kenkuro's life. Triple X. Sakura could admit that she hadn't felt as much as fear as she was feeling right now, running through bloody sand full of dead bodies. She was glad that they were only shinobi and that civilians and children weren't involved in this massacre. She had attempted to try and save as many as possible that she had come across but hadn't been successful even once. She was at a loss of what to do as she ran through the section. She had no idea what to look for or what was doing this. Shit. It's like we're going in circles. Tayuya commented lowly, but Sakura heard it because of how close they were running beside one another. They opted to stay close in case things got dangerous. She hasn't said much throughout them looking for the person responsible for the carnage. Honestly, to Sakura, it seemed that she didn't really care, and while she had something to say about that, she figured now was not the time. They stopped in the middle of the road, Tayuya being the first to stop and Sakura following after her and asked, "Hey, why did you stop?" "Quiet," she said, motioning with her finger to her lips. She tuned out any sound 25 meters all around them and listened closely for anything foreign. That was likely the only way she would be able to find the person that caused all this havoc. Not that she cared about anyone that had died, but just so she could fight already. She'd seen and heard a good part of the Kazekage's fight and now she wanted to get into the action as well. It wasn't long before she heard the unfamiliar sound of something inhuman moving. It sounded wooden, cackling, and soon she could map out how the thing was moving by how much she heard the cackling sound. "Sakura," she whispered quietly, not wanting to rupture her own eardrums by talking too loudly. "Hide. Something's coming." She broke out into a run and hid behind some debris opposite to Sakura, who had taken her own path and hid on the other side of the broken street. Sweat dropped down Sakura's brow. She was nervous. Something was coming, but she neither knew what or how dangerous it was. She only had Tayuya's warning to go off of, and if they had to hide then it couldn't be anything good. Finally, she heard the cackling sound that she was sure Tayuya had been hearing and peeked over her cover as slowly and as carefully as she could, seeing a puppet flying high in the air, almost at the top of another building. A puppet? Is that really what she heard? She struggled to think that a puppet would cause the need for them to hide. Sure, they were dangerous, but both of them could surely handle one without much trouble. But it was then she realized that she hadn't seen the puppet master despite it being around for this long, and she also saw no puppet strings, though she could attribute that as them being a bit too far away to see. She wouldn't have to wait to see what the puppet would do next, because several shurikens spun underneath the puppet, and Sakura supposed that that's where the stings were because the puppet immediately grew stiff and fell to the ground, shattering like glass. Sakura turned her gaze to see Tayuya ducking back behind cover. "Hey!" she called out in a whisper. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Tayuya countered fiercely, but still kept her voice to a whisper. "That thing noticed you because you kept peeking, and we would have been found out if I hadn't did that. Are you really that stupid in the head?" Sakura already felt the next insult on the tip of her tongue but restrained herself by biting her lower lip and turning away from the other shinobi. She would not lose her composure now. Not while their enemy was still unclear. "You have nice restraint." Sakura's eyes widened in both shock and fear as those words had been spoken by someone right behind her. She attempted to turn to the man but had barely turned a quarter before her neck was seized by something mechanical. She grabbed at it, using her strength so that it wouldn't be choking her completely while she was being lifted up in the air. But I hate waiting. Tayuya stood up from her cover, staring back into the narrowed eyes of the person she believed to have caused all of this. She cursed herself mentally. While she didn't care for Sakura in the slightest, she hadn't heard the man approach them at all, and that was the thing that caused her anger. "Heh, so you're the one who did all this," she said, ignoring Sakura's strange chokes. "I expected you to be taller." "Oh, really?" he asked, but wouldn't let her respond. An arm rigged with projectiles came from underneath his cloak sharply and multiple sunbon shot out. While it was fast, Tayuya was able to jump away to avoid being impaled, but something was wrong. Was this just another puppet? She heard the mechanical sound when he moved, but she also heard a heartbeat from this puppet. Unlike the one she had cut down. What's different? She wondered intently, looking at the sand shinobi more closely. She probably wouldn't be able to tell. Interesting. He drawled and rushed forward out of nowhere. He was faster than his weapons and she was caught off guard by his speed because of his size and was smashed into the wall behind her despite putting her hands up to block him. She tumbled off the wall onto the ground, her arm and back in pain from taking all that force so quickly. Yes, interesting indeed. He hadn't expected the girl to first be able to block his attack and dodge his initial one. She looked like she would prove to be fairly entertaining until the Kazekage was captured. Tayuya glared up at the Akatsuki member and decided to take action. She moved to her feet with a quick burst, dragged her hand through the sand below her, and threw it up at Sasori. It was enough to where she could even see his body anymore, so she quickly dug into her ninja pouch and brought out her special flute, quickly playing a distinct song. Music. Sasori paused in his speech as his body stiffened. Sakura saw this, broke free from his grasp, and leapt back for safety. What's going on? She too heard the sound of the music, but she didn't stiffen like he did. Or maybe did he just let her go? That was me. Tayuya landed beside her, and Sakura saw that familiar-looking flute in her hand. I played a song that put him in a genjutsu to freeze his body briefly. It won't last long, and any sudden movement near him will instantly break the hold. We need to think of a plan before he gets out. Wait, so that means we can't attack him, right? She turned to Tayuya with raised eyebrows. It's not perfect. It's only for a breather and nothing more. She explained. But it's better than nothing. At least we have time to plan. They both turned when they heard that familiar clicking sound again, seeing the man before them twitch slightly but otherwise not move. Plan for what, exactly? Sakura asked, slightly panicked, turning to Tayuya. We don't know much of anything about him. Then it's simple. Tayuya looked at Sasori as he moved slightly once more. We build our plan off each other's skills. Sakura's eyes widened slightly in surprise. She didn't expect this, but she knew that their only chance would be to work together. And she knew Tayuya knew this as well. Seems they've finally cooked up a plan. Sasori thought after a few moments of pretending to be under the genjutsu. He had been able to break out of it almost instantly after it being put upon him, but he wanted to see what they would come up with. He wanted a bit of entertainment until the Kazekage revealed himself. The puppet user could no longer sense his chakra. Sasori snapped awake, faking as if he were in the genjutsu the entire time. The girls were looking at him, both poising themselves for attack. Seems you two will have more fight than I first anticipated. Oh well, more fun for me. Tayuya grew a grin. You seem a bit confident. You don't know how much of fight we can put up, do you? Sasori seemed to look bored then. Both of you are unknown to me in my special bingo book. That means you both are chumps who are probably weak. Both of them got angry at that, but Tayuya acted upon her anger quickly, rushing the man directly. We'll see who's weak. She yelled. Damn it, wait. Sakura called out after her, running out herself in an attempt to try and help Tayuya. Tayuya reached into her pouch before throwing 3 shuriken at him. Without any trouble he used his metallic tail to block the attack. The shuriken fell to the ground uselessly, Tayuya appearing right before him soon afterwards and tried to punch him in the face. Sasori didn't even move from his spot as he grabbed the hand that tried to hit him with ease. Fool! He grabbed a hold of her arm, but Sakura appeared above him with one of her legs raised high. Not so fast. Sasori was forced to let Tayuya go and leap back to avoid being hit. The ground took it for him hard, breaking tremendously under the force of her devastating kick. Tayuya landed nearby, eyes widened, and mouth agape. When could the kunoichi do something like that? She was a weakling last time she'd seen her. While she was stunned, Sakura left off the ground to continue her assault, aiming to hit the Akatsuki with several strikes. While they were strong, they lacked the speed to actually hit Sasori as he weaved her punches and leaped back continuously to gain space. Tayuya snapped herself to attention, rolling with the circumstances, and pulling out her flute. If Sakura can keep him busy, then I can play to my strengths and counterattack, she thought, beginning to play a song on her flute. But damn! I never expected for her to be useful. She's stronger than before. Sakura let out a loud shout, trying to slam her fist some onto Sasori's head. He leaped back once more and her fist slammed onto the ground beneath them, crushing underneath her strength as if it were brittle, old cookies left out too long. She looked back up at Sasori as he skidded along the ground with a glare, growing increasingly annoyed at not being able to hit him. He was like an annoying fly that always seemed a second away from behind swatted. Impressive chakra control, Sasori complimented. I didn't expect to be facing a field medic. Sakura's eyes widened. How do you know that I'm a medic? She asked, confused. I can tell by your chakra control. Only a medical ninja could have such precise control over their chakra like that, and only field medics can use it in combat. Sasori explained. You're an interesting opponent for me. I haven't come across someone like you in a while, so I think I'll play with you for a bit. While Sakura was unnerved by the comment, she also felt a bit of pride. All her training was paying off. She was being recognized as a worth opponent for an S-class shinobi even though he wanted to play around with her. Sorry, but you'll find me more difficult of an opponent than to simply play with, she said, grinning. Oh, is that so? Then, tell me, how good is your knowledge in poison? He rushed at her, his poison-tipped metallic tail out in front of him, showing his intentions. Body flicker to chink. She realized in the panic, eyes widened before narrowing in determination. She leaped up, the tail smashing into the ground where she once was. She swung her leg in a roundhouse kick, but Sasori ducked underneath it and the force of her own body turned her around in the air completely. Sasori wasted no more time, sending his poison tail up from the ground, trying to pierce Sakura's abdomen. It almost did, but she had grabbed a hold of the tail, using quite a bit of her strength, despite being in midair. She landed on the ground a few meters away and then swung her arm down, forcing Sasori over her head and driving him into the ground so hard that the ground collapsed several tens of meters and she was forced to leap back for safety. She waited in silence, keeping on guard. This was the member of the Akatsuki. She shouldn't accept it to be that easy to take him out. Above her, Tayuya stood on a sand building, having took pause in the middle of her jutsu to watch Sakura dominate Sasori. Tayuya bit the bottoms of her lips sharply. Damn it! I never knew she was that strong. Now she had yet another rival to try and beat. Temari was number one on her list for defeating her and now this damned girl. I hate to admit it, but if we were to come to blows, I might have trouble fighting her. You know, the voice spoke from within the smoke, but it was close enough for Sakura to tell that it was still where she had thrown Sasori earlier. That puppet of mine hadn't been broken in almost 3 years. The smoke cleared all of a sudden, and Redhead with widened, crazy eyes stood in place of the small hunched-over man she had just seen. It gets me riled up. Suddenly both girls' bodies tended violently as they felt a heavy pressure on their bodies. Both felt as if death were staring them in the face, and all of that was because he had moved a single finger. What the hell? Tayuya was trying her damned hardest to keep herself from collapsing. Sakura was more used to feeling killing intent, having been trained to resist it by both Tsunade and Kakashi over the years of being their sole student. But still, it felt a bit suffocating, to keep it short. Damn it, Tayuya strained, falling slowly to her knees due to the fact that she was trying to keep herself standing. She wouldn't let herself be at the mercy of anyone else. She wouldn't. Sakura saw that her teammate looked about ready to pass out, her face as white as a ghost. I've got to find a way past this killing intent. Sweat dripping down her body, she took a forceful step, then another, and soon found herself a couple of meters away from Sasori. Sasori smiled. This girl is so fascinating. What do you plan to do exactly? Coming at me as slow as you are, I can easily dispatch of you, he taunted. Just try it. I'm not afraid of you. She took another step, more difficult than the last. I like that fire of yours. Sasori lifted his arm slowly, his palm open wide near her face. I'll oblige. Sakura stopped trying to move then. Getting in closer would do her no good. But she wasn't giving up, she had a plan. Since I'm dying anyway, why don't you tell me why you are capturing the Jinchuriki for? Sasori never lost that smirk of his and slightly tilted his head. Why do you want to know if you're going to die anyway? Sakura paused in her answer. She wasn't prepared for him to ask that. Most of the times, her enemies were so sure she was done for that they relinquished important information like nothing. But he's no normal enemy. She should have realized that. You don't have to look so troubled. He stepped up forward and leaned in close. I'll tell you why. Because we want to. Sakura's eyes had widened, and before she could respond, Sasori was pushed back by a force that even she couldn't see. He fell back onto his back and remained on the ground. Finally able to move, Sakura fell to the ground from the tension in her body being relieved all at once. Behind her, Tayuya was taking in deep breaths between a hysteric coughing fit. Sakura looked back up to find a hand being extended to her and looked up more to see that it was Ino with Hinata close behind her. Seems we made it here on time, forehead. Ino said. More than a little confused, Sakura reached up and Ino finished the motion, grabbing her hand and slowly hoisting her to her feet. Ino? Hinata? What are you doing here? She asked. Before they could answer, clacking sound erupted before them and they all turned to see Sasori slowly getting to his feet, his unnatural body clicking upon every movement. Even more toys for my collection. He said in a low growl, striking fear into Sakura's heart once more. He looked up at them with one dead-looking eye showing past the hand grasping his face. Why such scared-looking faces? I want a challenge before I kill you. Damn it! Sakura thought. They were so screwed. Side note, next part is the end unless the author updates it.